Do you realize how hard it is to get the urchins out of the house?
They're called millennials, and they're terrible.
Too many video games, too much not engaging in what's going on around them.
I don't think I'm an entitled slacker, honestly.
Are young people entitled slackers?
I came in like a rainbow.
And isn't their culture raunchy? She's Miley Cyrus.
She's like a bad example for the kids.
Certainly is.
But is Cyrus sleazier than my generation stars? Madonna and I are baby boomers.
You young people should be more like us.
I don't want nobody.
Or maybe not.
We are the generation that has an excuse for everything, which I think is one of our greatest contributions to mankind.
Not to mention our government programs that allow us to take money from young people.
We took all the money. We soaked up all the government services.
Excuse me, I have to take some of these. No, I'm the old person. I need this. Battle of the Ages. That's our show tonight.
And now, John Stossel.
I titled the show Battle of the Ages because there's a conflict between generations. My generation often says, young people act entitled, their attention spans are short, their celebrities are bad role models.
I came in like a rainbow.
We'll get to Miley Cyrus and public sexuality later, but first, something more important. My generation is running a scam. We steal from you young people.
Excuse me, I need to take this phone.
What are you doing? Hey, give that back.
I'm old, I need this. Mr. Dow, I need this doll. Stop. I need to take this scooter.
Hey, give that back.
Okay, I don't normally grab things from kids, but we get government money like there's no tomorrow. Because of Medicare and Social Security, government takes money from the young and gives it to people my age and older, even if we have plenty of money. And most older people are richer than young people. Look at this chart. People about my age have an average net worth that's more than double what 50-year-olds have and 27 times what 30-year-olds have. And yet, the 30-year-olds are taxed to pay for my health care. This is why I say America should cut entitlements. And if we don't, Medicare and Social Security will suck every penny away from young people. Young people like Jonathan Bidlack of the Coalition to Reduce Spending. So obviously you want spending reduced, but Mike Consol of the Roosevelt Institute says government should spend more. More? Are you kidding?
This is exactly how social insurance works. It's how all insurance works. And one thing about young people, regardless of what Miley Cyrus and other of their role models might tell them, is they will someday not be young people. They will get older. They will get older every year. And someday they will be old people. And they're going to need retirement security. They're going to need health care.
This is unsustainable. We're taking too much.
It's totally sustainable. Social Security has a small gap, which is manageable. We can either cut it or not do it. Or if we don't do anything on Medicare, it will bankrupt the government. If we don't do it through the government, it'll just bankrupt every individual person. I mean, every study that sees things like turning Medicare into a voucher increases healthcare costs. The government has a unique size.
But you said you want to spend more, so we'll bankrupt the government more quickly? I don't get it. You left-wing think tanks confuse me.
So Medicare, we need to cut the spending, and I think there's strong agreement on that. Social Security, I think we should spend a little bit more. I think these programs are working exactly how they're supposed to, and I think they do really good stuff.
I want to scream at him, but Jonathan, I'll let you talk.
Well, I think the irony is what you pointed out earlier is that, look, young people have less savings. They have less accumulated wealth than older generations. And so, people talk a lot about income inequality. And the reality is that we have government programs that are set up to take from that segment of the population, young people, who have less wealth and give it to those who are in a better position, which are the older generation. So, these programs are kind of antiquated, and they were meant for an age in which people didn't live to the same ages that we do today.
Yeah, that's a big point. When Social Security was passed, most people didn't even reach 65.
Right.
And now, I rudely refuse to die. I want all the good stuff that Medicare will pay for.
No one wants to throw, the older generation out on the streets and have them not have health care or not have retirement savings. The real question is, what's the best way to do that? If you look at those industries where cost goes down, like, say, technology, it's areas where government is generally not that involved. And the things where we often hear that we need...
When people shop around and government isn't involved, there's competition, prices come down!
And compare that to education or health care, where government is very much involved and costs are out of control.
Well, the market for a cell phone, like as kids I'm sure know, is not a market for insurance. I mean, there's something where you can
Market's a market.
No, you need groups, you need risk pools, you need large insurance. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why we think the insurance market will function a little differently than, say, food or phones or technology.
How much more should the rich pay?
At the top rate, let's say 45. Does that sound good?
I'm already paying 50.
Not the top rate. At 39. I'm talking about the federal rate.
State total taxes is 50.
But we should have taxes wherever they need to be to sustain what we need to do. And what we need to do is provide retirement security for old people and health care for Americans.
It's just not possible. We've run the numbers. If you took every penny from millionaires and billionaires, every penny, it would be about $660 billion. And that just covers today's deficit. It doesn't touch the $30 trillion unfunded liability that's coming up.
Absolutely. Well, that's why it's the people's pension. I mean, everyone contributes to Social Security, and everyone will take advantage of it when they hit an elderly age. Same thing with Medicare.
What if we gradually phased out the unsustainable entitlements by letting young people opt out? Ron Paul proposed that.
Would you consider opting out of the whole system under one condition? You pay 10% of your income, but you take care of yourself. Don't ask the government for anything.
And he got a standing ovation. So what's wrong with that, Mike?
That is the ultimate in freedom and liberty, is being able to starve in the streets as an elderly person.
Oh, come on. You're not starving in the streets.
Harsh.
You're saying, I take care of myself. I'm responsible for myself.
I'll put it this way. We are doing a real-time experiment on this over the past couple decades. We've been seeing the 401k programs, which have been meant to try to provide retirement security. I think it's fair to say they've been pretty much a failure. There's a lot of tax breaks that go to the rich. Which is exactly the kind of stuff.
People have pensions that they control.
They're not saving enough to even replicate a basic amount of what they want in their retirement. And I think the under savings, it's very difficult for people to save that way.
In real life, when governments promise people money that governments don't have, people suffer. A bunch of towns have already gone bankrupt. One was Pritchard, Alabama.
They didn't pay us like they're supposed to.
Alfred Arnold recently retired from the Pritchard Fire Department after working 35 years for the city. He'd hoped to relax and travel. Now, at age 66, he's a security guard at the local mall.
We put our money in every payday like you're supposed to, and the city is supposed to pay us, but they did not.
I think the story about Alabama is also very important for why these should be federal programs. I mean, the strengths and the trials of any individual state or any individual city are going to come and go with the economy. I mean, Detroit used to be an industrial powerhouse. Now it's in really bad shape. But the federal government...
Is the principle the same? Politicians, federal or local, are either good or responsible or venal?
I think the United States is going to have a productive future over the next few decades, and we can totally meet the requirements.
Even though all the projections say bankruptcy.
Well, all the projections say healthcare costs will bankrupt the government, or if we don't do it through the government, they'll bankrupt every individual person. So the question is, what's the best way to do it? And I think really going hard and trying to cut costs from Medicare, which we are trying to do right now, I think is the right solution.
But the way that you cut costs, in my opinion, and I think that the way that a lot of young people believe you have to do that is by injecting competition into the system, right? The reason that we're seeing healthcare costs blowing out is because we don't have that same competition that we have in other industries.
Why are Americans as clueless as Mike and not upset about our $30 trillion or more unfunded liability? Because most don't know about places like Pritchard, Alabama, and most don't even know that America now is $17 trillion in debt. How much is America in debt?
I don't know.
Okay.
No, I don't know.
I'm not sure exactly, but I know it's a lot.
Do you know? How many billion? A trillion. It's a couple of trillion, I think. I don't know.
This ignorance helps your argument.
I think they understand that, that they pay when they're young, they pay when they're middle-aged, and they collect when they're old. This is how insurance has always historically worked, and it's a good system. It's worth defending.
Well, it's a system, again, that was meant for
a good system.
It was meant for a population structure that doesn't exist nowadays, right? We have way more people.
Lots of workers, a few old people.
Exactly, and that's probably going to not change for the better going forward.
No, it's not. Thank you, Jonathan and Mike. To keep this conversation going on Facebook or Twitter, you can use that hashtag GenWarfare. Let people know what you think. Now, it's bad enough that entitlements are unsustainable, but making it even worse is that our birth rate is down. In America, it's now below replacement level. some people think that's probably a good thing because they worry about overpopulation.
I think humans are way over carrying capacity.
Way too many people. Yeah, way too.
Why? Why is it a problem?
Because there's not enough electricity, water, food, shelter, money for everybody, I think.
It's a common belief, but the opposite is true. And the author of this book understands that. What to expect when no one's expecting. America's coming demographic disaster. That's Jonathan Last. So, explain.
Since 1900, world population increased by 400%. 400%. Terrible things should be happening. Instead, what we see, life expectancy across the planet more than doubled, almost tripled. Per capita income more than doubled. And commodities prices declining by about 2% a year for the entire century. Things are getting less scarce. We're having more of everything.
So more people means more brains. People invent new ways to bring things to people.
Right. People aren't butterflies or ants, right? They create technology, and technology helps us decrease scarcity. We have innovation. It all builds on one another.
And Hong Kong has 20 times as many people per square foot as India. Hong Kong is rich, and just lots of room in the world.
It's a big world out there.
All right, but in rich countries, people are not having enough babies to pay for people my age.
People got to close their eyes and do it for Stossel, because we got to keep your Social Security and Medicare. Look, the nub of the entire Social Security and Medicare problem, it isn't about the old folks. It's about young people not making more future taxpayers. That's what we call babies, right? When Social Security was originally conceived, we had like 4, 5 kids in every family. Now we're down to 1.93, which is below the replacement level.
So let in more immigrants? Would that solve it?
No, immigration's a Band-Aid, and it's been a very helpful Band-Aid. We're actually very lucky. For whatever the costs and problems that it causes, we're lucky to have had it. But over the long haul, the problem with immigrants is they come in and then they start acting like everybody else and not having babies. So at the end of the day, you got to change the culture and convince people to start getting busy.
And you say that these entitlement programs, but to protect people my age, and discourage people from having more kids.
At the most basic level, you have kids so that when you get old and start drooling, if the kids aren't rotten, they'll take care of you. But Social Security comes along. This is a competing government program that says, we'll do the same thing. The U.S. government will do the same thing for you that grown-up children will be. So why go through the trouble of having the kids? And the studies bear this out.
That way?
The studies bear it out. Been a bunch of really good research on this shows that Social Security and Medicare depress the fertility rate by almost half a kid.
And people love these programs. Thank you, Jonathan Last. So all I can say is that to save America, you people need to start making babies right now. Go to it. Except be quick about it, because in a couple of minutes we'll be back with P.J. O'Rourke, who will explain that my generation not only steals from kids, we're spoiled and self-indulgent too. I'm special. I'm a baby boomer. There are lots of us. We're the group born right after World War II, specifically between 1946 and 64. We're called the baby boom because lots of soldiers came home after the war and boom, made babies like me. And also P.J. O'Rourke. He's the author of the new book, The Baby Boom, How It Got That Way, and it wasn't my fault, and I'll never do it again. So it wasn't my fault, I'll never do it again? What do you mean?
Well, I'm 66, I'll never do it again. and you know, we are the generation that has an excuse for everything, which I think was one of our greatest contributions to mankind. Yeah, we're completely self-absorbed. You know, we think about ourselves all the time. It's all about me. You know?
Don't most people, this was unique to us more than other groups?
It's probably not really, except we could afford to exercise this. I mean, we had the peace, the plenty, the stability to be spoiled kids. You know, there were plenty of kids that wanted to be spoiled kids in the greatest generation, but they kept having depressions in World War II and stuff like that. You know, and they just didn't get a chance. We got a chance to be spoiled. And when it turns out that when you have these kind of people really are able to do what they want in life, it's kind of libertarian. It turns out pretty well. And if you look at the number of wars and the amount of economic progress, the amount of technological innovation that has happened since the baby boom came of age, it's amazing. It's amazing.
And we did that?
Well, not you and me, unfortunately. It was like
we baby boomers did that?
It was Bill Gates, you know, I mean, Steve Jobs. These are baby boomers.
But you say we take credit for stuff we shouldn't take credit for,
well,
like
we
the civil rights movement, the feminist movement.
Yeah, we do have a tendency to take credit for. It's actually older people who did the civil rights movement. It was actually older people who did the feminist movement. It was older people who led the opposition, unsuccessful opposition to the Vietnam War. We were the tailgate party. We were not the team on the field during the 60s. We're a bunch of spoiled brats. You can't get us organized to do that stuff. You know,
It was sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Yes.
We were indulged. Our parents had said you must behave a certain way, and we said no, we're going to be
absolutely not
different. And you were a lefty at the time.
I went through that period.
What changed you?
I got a job. It was really pretty simple. I got paid every 2 weeks, and I'm really looking forward to that $150, and so's my landlord. And I get my first paycheck, and I'd netted out like 86 something and change. Like, I'm a communist. I'm a communist. I've been yelling and screaming in the streets for communism, demonstrating for communism, and rioting for communism. And then I get a job with a big capitalist corporation, and I find out we got communism already. They just took half my money. I'm not Rockefeller. So
that changed you.
That changed me.
You write, our depth and breadth of prejudice toward our parents would shock 21st century sensibilities.
There was a period there during at the height of baby boom adolescence, you know, in the 60s and 70s, where we so detested everything about the square world, the straight world, everything our parents did, said, the things they wore. We didn't usually detest them personally. Personally, we thought they were just pathetic, but their world, we just absolutely hated it. I mean, if we were to say that about a certain religion, a certain race, a certain ethnicity, the kind of things that we said about our parents in the 60s, we'd be marched from the room. We'd be marching ourselves out of the room. You know, we'd be washing our own mouths out with soap.
I don't hear kids today vilifying their parents the way we did.
No, because their parents are us.
I know better.
Their parents are us. Who could vilify us? You know, we're so sweet. We're so understanding. When they come to us and say, Dad, you know, drugs, you know, there are a lot of drugs in school. We go, yeah. How much are they going for? If I just hang out in the parking lot.
Whatever good things we did, we are now the problem for America. We are this big generation. We're retiring. We expect to collect Medicare, Social Security. And
I don't know about you, but I'm already on Medicare.
We're rudely living longer than people used to.
Yeah. All these systems were fine. All these systems were predicated on the idea that everybody died at 67, you know?
And we're living to 78 on average.
Yeah, and 140, you know, if it's really going to use up all the money for the kids.
And we want all the good, expensive stuff medicine can provide now.
Sure, why
so
not?
We will vote against politicians who say we're going to try to make it work out, which means some cuts.
We're behaving like normal human beings, you know, always have, you know, when you're selfishly. I mean, people are selfish. We didn't, at least this isn't really our fault in the sense we didn't set up these two systems that are going to break the back of the economy, Social Security and Medicare and all its various Medicare offshoots.
So you're going to give your Social Security back?
Oh, sure. Sure I am, yeah. Nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to do that. And, you know, it's very sad because it's going to take a major crisis. I mean, these things are going to have to get so large. We're going to have to turn into Greece before this stuff gets fixed.
Thank you, P.J. O'Rourke. Coming up, an amazing development. This woman has been reincarnated in the body of Bill O'Reilly. He's here to explain why America must stop kids from doing dangerous things like texting and smoking weed. What?
I have been spying, but folks wouldn't let her. I don't mind all the guys dancing with my girl. That's fine.
Ladies and gentlemen, a remarkable thing has happened. This woman, who died 100 years ago, has come back to life. Carrie Nation of the Women's Christian Temperance Union helped bring America alcohol prohibition. She called drinkers whiskey-swilled rummies. She marched into bars with her hatchet and destroyed the booze, sometimes the bar too. People feared her. She was big, about 6 feet tall, 180 pounds. Even men ran from her. Now her obituary says she died years ago, but I say that she lives on in the body of another large, intimidating person. Here he is, Bill O'Reilly. And Bill, I say this to you in your studio because you say things like this.
Is America going to pot? Oh, Facebook and the tweeting and it is hard to make a living, and no man, you're going to be a terrible citizen.
Pot, video games, texting make for terrible citizens?
Well, it takes you away from reality, does it not?
Sure.
Okay. So number one, if you do it beyond recreational, I don't like pot. I don't think that's good for you. But I don't care what kind of games or tweets you do recreationally. But if it takes over your life, if that's what's on your mind all the time, as with many urchins, they become addicted to it, then that's going to hurt you.
But you're on this curmudgeon crusade.
I've always been. When I was 3 years old, I was a curmudgeon.
An epidemic that will lead to a weaker America?
Absolutely.
Video games?
Look, if you are devoting your life to the internet, as so many young people are, all right, you are not learning about the world. You are not learning personal interactions. You're just tweeting and texting your life away over trivial things. But more importantly, it isn't a challenge. And challenges are what defines human beings. What I'm afraid of is that someday we're going to be up against the Chinese. It's going to be the Chinese kids here, okay? The Americans kids here. And the Chinese kids are going to kick the Americans' butts.
But the American kids learn playing these games. You ever watch Halo? I've seen
you can learn on those
kids
games.
Talking to on earphones and talking to kids in other countries. They are trying to kill people.
I understand there's an educational value, and kept under control, it's a good thing. But when it takes over your life, because this internet stuff is addicting, believe me, it is addicting to children, then you become a person who doesn't live in the real world and doesn't have any challenges. Do you realize how hard it is to get the urchins out of the house now? I mean, you can't get them out of the house because the machines have such an allure, because it's instant gratification. You don't have to practice like you do in a sport. You don't have to lift weights to get strong. All you have to do is this, okay? And that's
so
what
they aren't really communicating with other people.
And they're getting soft and they're getting stupid because you solve problems by doing things out of your environment. That's how you solve problems. And you know that. You know that.
So in terms of people texting all the time, was this better? This is what people did on the train years ago.
They read papers.
They aren't communicating either.
No, but they're reading about the world, are they not?
But these kids are communicating with each other.
About their socks. I am wearing orange socks. Aren't they cool? Do you know what they're texting, Stossel? Have you read the texts?
Not all of them.
Okay.
Not some of them.
They're not talking about Dostoevsky.
All right. In this country of 320 million people, I bet a few are talking.
No, they're not. They're talking about what they had for dinner and where the best tacos are.
Is there any chance that you're a grouchy old man who just doesn't see the benefit of this?
I was a grouchy little kid. I was a grouchy teenager, a grouchy young adult, and now I'm a grouchy. I wouldn't say I'm old. You're old. I'm not old. But I'm
young
approaching.
At heart, though. You are.
Right.
I look at what they create. Facebook. It's a wonderful thing.
It is, if you can control it. And very, very few people. But
you on TV are going beyond that. It's a cyberspace addiction rate, an epidemic that is leading to a weaker America.
That's true. There's no doubt in my mind.
You know, Socrates said, our youth now love luxury. They have bad manners. Old people have always complained about young people.
So what? Old people are smarter than young people. And Socrates said that, and right after that, he drank the hemlock and died. So, I mean, you know, come on. He was so depressed about the younger generation in Greece that he killed himself.
I think in this case, the younger people may be smarter than we, and we'll find out in 50 years.
You speak for yourself, Stossel. They're smarter than you, but they're not smarter than me.
Thank you, Bill O'Reilly. I'm almost relieved when I escape his studio alive. O'Reilly and other grouchy old people have always complained about the behavior of the young. Now people complain about Miley Cyrus. Am I just another Bill O'Reilly-like curmudgeon because I think it's raunchy for a teen idol to do this? Come on, Miley. But what about this guy? He was once criticized for being vulgar, too. So was she. That discussion will come up later, but next, are you younger people lazy, entitled losers? I'm told that you are. We'll debate that.
I don't think I'm an entitled slacker, honestly.
A new type of worker has entered the workforce. They're called millennials, and they're terrible.
We should cut them some slack. When they were growing up, their parents drank and took naps at work.
Different generations do have their quirks, and when Bill O'Reilly complains about entitled young people who can't communicate, lots of older people agree with him.
He's the best man on TV, and he is right about everything he says about that.
Is the younger generation not as good as we were?
No, they're not. Too many video games, too much not engaging in what's going on around them.
Are the millennials lazier?
They're not lazier. They are just a little bit more comfortable with the situation of not doing anything. They're okay if they don't study. They're okay if they don't work.
Okay if they don't work? That attitude is a reason why Charlotte Hayes wrote, "When did white trash become the new normal?" But Jason Dorsey says, cut us young people some slack. He's called the Gen Y guy because he researches millennials for a living. You can make a living researching millennials?
You sure can. Well, there's 80 million of us in the U.S., and we're transforming the workforce and the marketplace, and people can't seem to figure it out. So we need data.
You're now the largest group. It was we baby boomers. Now it's you guys. And
now you just complain about us.
Well, if there are more of you, it sounds sad. New York Post says you're the worst generation. Idle trophy kids, says the Boston Globe. Do you dispute this?
At the end of the day, all these people griping, Bill O'Reilly, my dad, everybody griping. Entitlement is a learned behavior. You are not born entitled. You have to be raised that way.
So we taught it to you?
Absolutely, 100%.
Charlotte?
He's got a point there. This is a generation that's been spoon-fed self-esteem. So yeah, we taught it to them. I think, and I think they're going to
spoon-fed self-esteem.
Yeah, they have self-esteem.
You're wonderful no matter what you do.
Their parents hover around them. They're not allowed to fail. They're not allowed to learn by failing. They never have to sink or swim. So yeah, we taught it to them.
And interviewing people on the street, I was surprised that other young people said, yeah, compared to other generations, we're slackers.
I feel like young people expect everything to be handed to them now, and I am one of those young people, but I don't know. When you hear like your grandparents talk, the way we live is really different now.
Our parents' generation is just more hardworking in general.
Yeah, we're more hardworking.
I think the biggest issue is when stuff is not working out for us. Do our parents let us move back home or not? And do we expect somebody to come in and save us?
There's a term for living at home with your parents too long. It's failure to launch. And a lot of this generation is suffering from failure to launch. Look,
but let's just be clear. If you look at the data,
it's failure to parent.
Pew shows about
36% either live with their parents or in school.
But it's not that different. It used to be 32%. And what's so terrible about that?
Look, going out on your own is how you become an adult. And if you have too many people living at home and too many parents welcoming their kids at home, we're in trouble as a society. We've never had a large group of people who fail to grow up. Maybe my generation has been accused of that.
But look at what some of these kids have created. Facebook, YouTube, Firefox, Groupon.
Yeah. They've created great things, and they're wonderful with the internet. Unfortunately, not everybody is that
wonderful with yeah. All we've done is create internet jobs. We start restaurants, we own a construction company. I mean, we do a lot more things than just text without looking.
The Department of Labor did a study tracking people for 10 years, and they found, I think 2 years ago, that the 26-year-olds in that study, 14% of them weren't doing work for pay. Now that's bad news. They weren't going to school, they weren't doing work for pay, they weren't inventing Facebook. It's great for the people who have invented Facebook, but that's not the whole generation.
Yeah. Let's put that in context, though, right? So the workforce participation right now from the 25 to 34 demographic is 81.7%. That's pretty good. I mean, historically, is that fantastic? No.
Slower than it was.
What we see is a lot of employers are saying, you know what? I don't want to take a flyer on that 17, 18, 19-year-old. I'll let somebody else who I know is going to get here early, dress a certain way, and do these certain things. We are seeing this constantly.
So your generation won't get there early?
The assumption is we won't, and so in some cases we're not getting a chance. Our generation has extremely valuable skills. Do we need some things?
You acknowledge that they're different and they're weird.
Of course we're different. Every generation is different. How is that weird?
How are they different?
Well, I mean, for me, I communicate differently, right? I got to see how you guys communicated earlier. I mean, you want to actually make a phone call and leave a voicemail, which would freak me out. Like, oh, there's somebody left me a voicemail. Clearly not in Gen Y. So we see communication.
So the employer's supposed to say, these people are weird, but maybe they have a better way, and back off?
It depends if the employer really needs that skill set. If you're in a market, absolutely, where Gen Y has the skill set you need, such as technology, some of these quick service restaurants, retail, and you want that skill set, and that's the employment group, and doing one or two things that are free and save you time, absolutely they should do it.
Look, Gen X people walk in and they say, I want to make a difference today. I want to be a manager today. And it's great to want to make a difference and be a manager, but you know what you're supposed to do on your first day? You're probably supposed to file papers.
Gen Y doesn't even know what it means to pay your dues. So we literally do not know what's expected when we show up to work.
It's worse than we thought. It's worse than I thought.
It is worse than you thought. I never was taught how to shake hands, look you in the eyes, have a conversation, and do all the stuff that you guys were taught by your parents around the dinner table, entry-level jobs.
Shake hands and look someone in the eye?
Where would we be taught? Seriously.
Gen Y, by
I've
their
spoken in
parents.
700 schools. Nobody teaches this stuff. I wrote a bestseller on it because it was, here's how to shake hands and tie a tie, right? 50% of us come from divorced homes. Our parents are not teaching us this stuff.
This idea that they only want the right job. Here's an illustration of that from the TV show Girls.
You remind me a lot of myself 10 years ago.
Thank you. Speaking of which, I don't want to be here in 10 years. That is not my plan.
All right, Hannah. There's a lot of other people who would love to have your job.
That's it?
This is the attitude.
Yeah. Well, that ticks me off, John. You learn to climb by doing the really lowly level things. And look, I think it's great if you invent the Facebook or whatever. Al Gore, of course, invented the internet. I think all of that's great.
But the guy really did invent Facebook.
Yeah, you've got to do the grunt work. Yeah. And this generation won't do that. You've got to shake hands and look somebody in the face.
Yeah, we're agreeing on this. Here's the issue, though, right? If you will give me one example, a short video that I can watch, I guarantee you they'll do it. If they won't and you roll your eyes like that, there you go.
Thank you, Jason Dorsey and Charlotte Hayes. As the battle of the ages continues, I want to ask, what's the difference between Miley Cyrus and Madonna and Elvis? That's next.
I wouldn't put Elvis Presley and Madonna in the same category because I think Elvis Presley had a whole lot of talent musically, and he used to say ma'am a lot, and that goes a long way with me.
You think that's gross? That's Miley Cyrus. She used to look like this. She was a Disney child star using the name Hannah Montana. Now she earns headlines by twerking at the Video Music Awards. What a sleazy message to send to her teenage fans.
Bad example for the kids.
When I had to see her on TV, I turn off.
I teach my kids to stay off of that wireless internet stuff.
Stay off of that internet wireless stuff? It sounds like an out-of-touch curmudgeon like Bill O'Reilly. But I understand how he feels about a 21-year-old Miley twerking on national TV. It is vulgar. Or am I just another cranky old man? Is what Miley does that different from what Madonna did years ago?
Waiting for you to justify my love.
Even MTV refused to run that video. And what about Elvis Presley? The New York Daily News called his act animalism that should be confined to dives and bordellos. Frank Sinatra said his kind of music's deplorable, a rancid-smelling aphrodisiac. It fosters destructive relations in young people. Whoa, Elvis seems so tame now. Do we just adjust to increasing levels of public sexuality? Some say the culture will constantly decay until we drown in a cesspool of smut. Michael Moynihan, however, says we should chill out. He's a columnist for the Daily Beast who writes about pop culture.
I do.
But, I mean, this is much more sexual than anything my generation did.
Is it really? Madonna did a book called Sex. And in that book, she was performing sort of sexual acts with people on page. Look, it's different now.
She was older than Miley Cyrus.
She was older than Miley Cyrus, but Miley Cyrus is 21 years old. What's going to be the limit? She has to be 25? She has to be 30? What has been the effect of this? Teen pregnancy rates are down quite precipitously, actually. STD rates are down quite precipitously also. We talk about we're offended by this stuff. You know, you have these people on the street saying, I turn it off when I see a beautiful woman writhing naked on television. You do? Not many people do. I mean, the person's a liar, I would say. But what is the effect? People say, well, we're overly sexualized, and that's bad. It's bad for the kids. How? We have to ask that follow-up question. What is it doing to them? What is it doing to our sexual behavior?
They are more likely to have sex young, to not form healthy relationships.
But there's no truth to that, though. There's less sex amongst young people now. I mean, you look at these studies, and you look at the sort of trend lines, and they're all going down.
The Elvis backlash is hilarious to look back and see. Ed Sullivan says, unfit for family viewing. He wouldn't have him on his show. But then later he did. Washington Post, no respect for customs or elders and no manners. And it really is generational. The fussy old people being disgusted by Elvis.
Yeah, I mean, look, moral panics are one of our favorite things because it drives, I mean, you can write these columns. If there's nothing to be panicked about, what do you write about? And what we always think is that we are a unique generation. These people beneath us, these, you know, that are 20 years younger than us, are doing something we never would have done. It's total nonsense. Now we have it.
Well, I don't think most kids would have twerked.
Well, maybe twerking. Maybe twerking is something new. But it's a new dance move. You have these things, you know, zoot suit riots. I mean, this is the 1940s. Sexualized dances. The difference now is that we have a way of pushing this stuff out, and kids can all see it. They can all see it on computers. And, you know, look, Miley Cyrus isn't the problem. Every kid with a computer and an internet connection has access to pornography. Kids see this stuff, and they think there's, you know, that's pretty standard stuff. Why attack Miley? Poor girl.
One more sample of the media freaking out. The New York Post ran the headline, Why Parents Are Terrified of Miley. And the host of Morning Joe said that Cyrus is
obviously deeply troubled, deeply disturbed, clearly has confidence issues, probably an eating disorder. That was not attractive. That was not fun. That was not funny. And that was really, really bad for anybody who's younger and impressionable.
It's a typical reaction.
Yes, it is. I mean, she doesn't seem to have confidence issues to me. I mean, she seems to be quite happy with herself and her body.
Thank you, Michael Moynihan. Coming up, why Moynihan is probably right and Bill O'Reilly utterly wrong.
Too many video games, too much not engaging in what's going on around them. They have total disregard for what's going on.
Playing around with their cell phone.
Why is that a problem?
A problem because they don't know how to communicate with you.
They don't know how to communicate? It's true, millennials spend hours playing with their phones, but so what? That is communication. They share information with each other. Is this a better way for people to spend time? This is what I usually do, but I don't claim it's better. Today, the media worry that young people will be injured because they text while walking.
We've all seen what can happen when we don't pay attention while we text.
All right, you might fall into a pool or be hit with a car. So some people want laws passed against texting while walking. Give me a break. People can do two things at once. Distraction accidents will happen, but they've always happened. My own grandfather was killed by a bus when he crossed the street while reading a book. Surprised politicians haven't banned books. Crotchety old geezers like Bill O'Reilly say because kids spend so much time on the internet and play violent video games, there are now more school shootings and other violence. And it's true that the internet allows easy access to violence and all kinds of nasty stuff. But where's the evidence of harm? There isn't any. In Japan, kids spend more time playing violent games, but there's less violence in Japan. And in America, as internet use has grown, violence is down. Youth violence dropped 55% over the past 20 years. And despite media hype, there are fewer school shootings, not more. If O'Reilly were on TV in the 50s, he would have ranted about comic books. The Senate then held hearings about comics causing juvenile delinquency. Superman, said the experts, embodied sadistic fantasies, particularly injurious to children. Maybe you young people will just ignore the older generation. Yes, the culture is coarse, and when sex is pushed at kids, I cringe. So I'm surprised by what this grandmother said.
Bad example?
No,
Absolutely.
I don't. No, I think she's wonderful. My granddaughters twerk. No!
Really, the granddaughters are twerking? I think that's over the line. But again, where's the evidence of harm? As Michael Moynihan said, over the past 20 or so years, sex has been in everyone's face, yet teen pregnancy dropped by 50%. And now teenagers wait longer before having sex. Old people always talk about the good old days, but the good old days were not so good. When I was young, more kids were intolerant, racist, homophobic. There's no need for a battle between generations. Kids today are better, not worse. That's our show. See you next week.